Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, before I begin, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me information, linked me, tagged me, whatever. And if you have a tip for me, please feel free to send it my way. And that would be Barrett Peterson, Jason Dance, David Walker, and Seth Richland. Guys, thank you so very much. And again, please keep sending in those tips. And with that, let's start with Premier Diagnostics. They are basically restoring sensitive customer information on a publicly accessible server, leading to the potential data breach of roughly 52,000 of their patients. This was found by Comparitech and it was exposed. They have since, I believe, locked it down. But heads up if you use Premier Diagnostics here in the United States. Moving on, I'm going to give you an update on the AMCA, or the American Medical Collection Agency. This is an update from their 2019 data breach. I actually went back into my notes because I have all of my notes going back years on breaches, and I've been reporting on this one for a while. But they finally reached an agreement with 41 state attorneys general, which could basically lead to a $21 million fine to resolve this multi-state investigation from their massive healthcare data breach. Now, you may remember them because they are the ones that got Quest Diagnostics and 11.9 million of their patients hit, as well as LabCorp for 7.7 million patients, Clinical Pathology Laboratories with 2.2 million patients, BioReference with 422,000 patients, and on and on and on. That was a huge, huge problem. And here we are, $21 million fine to resolve that massive data breach. Moving on, I want to give you guys an update on SITA, S-I-T-A. This is one of my finalies from last week. They got over 90% of the airline industry essentially hit, especially with things like frequent flyer, mileage points and memberships and all of that. And so now we are starting to see more airlines disclose. Last week it was American Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Malaysia Airlines, United, and all of that. This week it's Lufthansa out of Germany, Finnair out of Finland, Japan Airlines out of Japan, Cathay Pacific, South Korean airline Jeju Air, and Nippon Airways also out of Japan. And so we are going to just keep on rolling with this. But if you're a frequent flyer and have a membership in a major airline anywhere on the planet, odds are your data was hit along with mine. Moving on, let's talk about a company called NetGain Technology, because medical practices are declaring breaches as a result of a data center ransomware attack on NetGain apparently late last year. Multicare is an organization that is supported by a company called Wood Creek Provider Services, both of whom had to declare a breach because of NetGain. So heads up to you if you have anything to do with NetGain Technology in your supply chain, you may also be looking at a data breach yourself. Moving on. Let's talk about healthcare provider Elara Caring. They potentially exposed the personal details of more than 100,000 elderly patients. Now, a phishing email was sent basically from an unknown external entity to two of their employees, and obviously they clicked the links when they shouldn't. Potentially exposed data includes names, dates of birth, address, phone numbers, financial and bank account information, social security numbers, insurance information, and account numbers, as well as driver's license numbers here in the United States. So heads up if you have a loved one that uses Elara Caring or you use them yourself. Moving on. Let's talk about the Adecco Group. This is an international staffing agency from what I understand, because according to Cyber News, a user on a popular hacking forum was allegedly selling stolen credentials from 6 South American countries for the Adecco Group. Now, the database contained 5 million records of people from Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Chile, and Ecuador. So heads up, if you have anything to do with the Adecco Group in South America, you may have been exposed. Moving on. Let's talk about the New London Hospital in New Hampshire. Now, an unauthorized individual gained access to a file on their network in July of 2020 and may have obtained the personal health information of 34,878 patients. We are talking about patient names, limited demographic information, and social security numbers. However, no diagnosis, treatment, or hospitalization information was compromised. New London Hospital is unaware of any misuse of information, as they always are, contained in this file. And so there you go. The network system which the file was stored on is no longer in use by the hospital as well. So hopefully that will be contained. Moving on, I want to give you an update on Excellion. If you recall, this is the breach that's been going on for at least a month or so now, if I recall correctly, and a lot of different companies were using their file transfer system and they got hit. And so this week, Flagstar Bank essentially disclosed that they too are caught up in Excellion. So if you use Flagstar Bank, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's head on over to Ireland and talk about Fastway Couriers. They got hit with a cyber attack, and the company confirmed that names, addresses, email accounts, and phone numbers of 446,143 people were accessed during this attack, which is believed to have happened in January. So heads up, Fastway Couriers customers in Ireland. Moving on, let's head on over to Germany and talk about their soccer club Stuttgart, from obviously the city of Stuttgart, home of Porsche as well. Now, Stuttgart has been fined 300,000 euros, which is roughly 357,000 US, for misusing private data about its members, according to GDPR regulators. Now, Stuttgart has basically been accused of passing on data which was potentially useful for marketing to third parties without informing members. So if you follow the German soccer club Stuttgart and have signed up to be, I guess, a fan, a member, whatever that is, heads up, they sold you to marketers. Moving on, let's head on over to France, to the Oloron Saint Marie hospital system, because a ransomware attack paralyzed that hospital in southwest France. Now, the incident took place this past Monday, and the ransomware gang is demanding a ransom of $50,000 worth of Bitcoin. In February, 2 other hospitals in France were hit with ransomware attacks as well, and so authorities believe that French hospitals are being targeted right now. So heads up if you are in France or you use the Oloron Saint Marie Hospital in southwest France. Moving on, let's talk about Molson Coors. This is the massive beverage corporation known for beers such as Coors Light, Miller Lite, Molson Canadian, apparently, I didn't know that, Blue Moon, Peroni, Killian's, and Foster's, which is Australian for beer, although from what I understand from my Australian friends, they totally disagree with that. I'm a 4X fan myself. Now, in a Form 8K filing with the SEC on March 11th, Molson Coors disclosed that they suffered a cyber attack on March 11th, causing significant disruption to their operations, including the production and shipment of beer. And let me tell you, hackers, criminal hackers, if you are messing with the alcohol supply in the United States during a pandemic, we will hunt you down. We will hunt you down. You know this. Now, moving on, let's talk about the city of Covington, Louisiana. The city of Covington's computers were hit because here we are. They lost all access to services, including police, fire, finance, and public works. Phone call and email access systems were locked down due to a cyber attack on March 12th. Customers could not pay utility bills, but they said 911 was still operational. Now, the reason why I find that interesting is that if basically people lost access to police, fire, and other things, then how would 911 exactly work when you're calling for an emergency? Regardless, City of Covington, we obviously hope you get back on your feet in Louisiana. Moving on, let's talk about the government of Spain, because the Spanish government has fallen victim to a ransomware attack this past Tuesday that impacted the IT systems of the agency that manages and pays out government unemployment benefits, known as the SEPE. Now, the incident affected the agency's back-end systems and public website, and SEPE staff in 710 offices across Spain had to cancel and reschedule meetings with unemployed workers after they were locked out of their central systems. 52 self-serving telematic systems were also down following the attack as well, and so hopefully the SEPE of the Spanish government will get back online. Moving on, let's talk about Sky ECC. This is actually an encrypted phone company that apparently is heavily used by criminals, and I will tell you why. And obviously legitimate people as well. We all should use good encryption in our lives, but here's why we're talking about the criminals that use Sky ECC, because the Belgian federal police say authorities have decrypted around 500 million messages sent by users of Sky ECC. Now, this is really interesting, and I just find this fascinating. Now, according to the Post that the Belgian federal police put out, and I quote, "In total, around 1 billion encrypted messages have been intercepted in this folder, nearly half of which have been decrypted to date. So basically, they also added that their investigators have been reading decrypted messages live for around 3 weeks, and by virtue of this, authorities have arrested 48 people in the wake of obtaining these messages, according to their bulletin or their announcement. Now, 6 days ago, on their actual blog, Sky ECC themselves, had a post entitled "Sky ECC platform remains secure, and no unauthorized Sky ECC device has been hacked." When you go to their actual website, a pop-up immediately appears and says, and I quote, "Sky ECC remains secure and was not hacked. Fake phones shown by Dutch police." Now, the official press release from the Dutch police confirms that they are investigating according to Sky ECC, again, and I quote, "The official press release from Dutch police confirms that they are investigating a fake Sky ECC phone. This phone was developed by someone who has been passing themselves off as an official reseller for some years." So basically, this is really interesting because with 500 million messages decrypted, this is going to be a real fun one to watch, because Sky ECC claims, no, you're basically getting knockoff phones. These are not our phones. We have not been hit. No problems there. So that is going to be a really interesting thing to unfold. And obviously, I will keep you up to date here. And finally, and we've got 2 finalies for you. I actually did a video on this one a few days ago because I think that this really underscores the problem we have with essentially private surveillance states, and that would be the company Verkada. Now, I'm not going to get into that side of it, but here's the nuts and bolts of what happened. According to a report by Bloomberg, Verkada, basically, which is a cloud-managed enterprise security software, was a victim of a data breach that allowed an international group of hackers to gain access to 150,000 cameras across the globe. Now, they have a ton of high-end clients like Tesla, for example, hospitals, prisons, Cloudflare, the cloud security, internet security company. They were all affected by this breach. And now, essentially, they had a super admin credential that was found publicly on the internet. And so somebody was able to get in, and they got so deeply in that they were able to take pictures, copy out videos, and all of that, which really underscores a problem in the sense that they are not securing their back end and isolating these things. As a super admin, I could go and look at Tesla. They also included video from women's clinics in what they stole and everything else. This is a huge, huge problem that they've got, and it really underscores that issue here of surveillance, because you basically are going on the camera quite a lot of time without your consent, whether you're pushing a doorbell and it's a Ring doorbell or another competing doorbell cam, walking into a building that basically has security, picking up your license plates in parking lots. I mean, all this kind of stuff is there for security, but as it's being stored centrally in the cloud, it needs to be protected. It needs to be compartmentalized. No single super admin should be able to essentially log in and have access to the whole thing without having to jump through other challenges as well, and compartmentalizing the back end with encryption, so in case that data is stolen, it's useless to the attackers. So Verkada should be a lesson to us all. And finally, and I found this one to be really interesting, and the question is, what is actually causing our data breaches? Now, before I jump into the news here, law number 3 of the 5 laws of cybersecurity, which I hope you've all seen, is humans trust even when they shouldn't. And I think personally it's the most important law of them all. And well, since I wrote it, yes, I hope you agree. Now, here's why humans trust even when they shouldn't. Law number 3 is the most important, because human error, we have numbers on, is now the main data breach trend under the new GDPR laws, not actual cybersecurity incidents. And this is according to the Irish Data Protection Commission. Ireland, interestingly enough, has been really, really on it compared to many GDPR countries. And it's not to say the others are slouching, but they have been very aggressive in tracking and finding and doing all of these things. Good kudos to you, Ireland. Now, the DPC, or the Data Protection Commission of Ireland, has detailed the breach trends that it observed during the first year of GDPR, and unauthorized disclosures topped the list, accounting for 83% of all reported breaches, meaning we, as humans, created an error. We clicked a link we shouldn't have. We went to a website we shouldn't have. We believed an email we shouldn't have. And by virtue of that, we are allowing attackers in. Meaning 83% of the time, it's not the technological defenses. It's not the failure of your firewall. It's the failure of the human mind, the untrained human mind. Now, one controller of the DPC reported a total of 7 incidents to the DPC where email accounts of staff members were potentially compromised. A significant amount of personal data was involved, with various levels of risk presented to affected data subjects. These breaches particularly continued reoccurrence, and the result was the controller's failure to have an appropriate technical and organizational measure in place to ensure the security of personal data stored within their IT environment. Meaning, as you are getting in and your humans are, let's say, making an error by accidentally clicking that link, what we don't have to back up the human is that safeguard of, let's say, data encryption. So, for example, you can lock down through things like DLP technology your file. So if, let's say, I break into your system and I steal a file, it's useless to me because it's encrypted and I can't unlock it without having those keys as well. I mean, this is what we're talking about here. So the human brain needs training. Everybody needs to have training. I cannot stress this enough. You should be phishing your people. You should be sending periodic information security reminders and on and on and on. Be vigilant out there, because if we're going to hit you, we're going to hit your employees. And that is one of the most important lessons to take away. And those were your breaches of the week. Were you affected? There's an 83% chance you were. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.